Hello, I hope I'm not too late in wishing you a happy 2025 as you join me on Search for Truth, your Bible teaching programme with teacher Brian Johnston. I'm John Martin, and this year I will have been your host since the year 2000. But our teaching programme has been aired much longer than that. It's been heard every week worldwide at various times and in many nations since it began on Transworld Radio during the 1970s. We begin a new series of talks today, which goes way back to the early days of New Testament Bible history. It's the story of Saul from Tarsus, and today's episode is called The Most Reluctant Convert in All of Palestine. For those who are unfamiliar with the story, today's talk is written by Brian by way of introduction as well as a beginning to the Bible narrative. So I hope you'll enjoy it. If you miss any of the 15 episodes in this series, there's a book available to accompany, and I'll be telling you how you can get it after Brian's talk. So let's go now and begin with Brian.
Thanks, John. Before the area known as Cilicia became a Roman province, it seems many Jews lived there. Not a few of them would have adapted their customs, in some degree at least, to the prevailing Greek culture that had spread throughout much of the world at that time. When the Romans took over the administration of Cilicia, Jewish landowners there were granted Roman citizenship. The man we're going to be considering grew up in a city of Cilicia known as Tarsus, born as a Roman citizen. Tarsus, as Saul will later tell us, was by no means an insignificant city. It was in fact one of the 3 world-class university cities of its time. This background may help to explain how Saul from Tarsus in Cilicia could come to be considered as a man of 3 worlds, the world of the Jews, the Greeks, and of the Romans. Saul, coming from a devout Jewish family, would certainly have been instructed from childhood in the sacred Jewish scriptures, commonly known to us as the Old Testament. Even as Saul grew up in this city of advanced learning, he was also deeply devoted to his Jewish religion and was making outstanding progress in it. So much so, it appears from his own later testimony that his parents likely sent him to some kind of boarding school operated by rabbis in Jerusalem. Gamaliel was one particularly notable rabbi based there at that time, and it was under him that Saul was privileged and indeed qualified to be selected to study. In every sense, Saul had the finest education a man could get. What's more, he had an incisive mind and proved to be a fast learner, but he was also deeply conservative in defending his ancestral traditions. He certainly had an impeccable Jewish set of credentials. He was circumcised the 8th day, of the nation of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to the righteousness which is in the law, found blameless. Philippians chapter 3, verses 5 to 6. With this background, Saul saw Christianity as a sect, the sect of the way. He saw it as a perversion of Judaism. Its followers he regarded as deluded, believing in an impostor, a blasphemer, a mere man who only made himself out to be God. Saul was the least likely person to be attracted to Christianity. In fact, we could probably say he was the most reluctant candidate for conversion in all of Palestine. But he did become converted. We'll let him tell us his story in his own words. I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated under Gamaliel, strictly according to the law of our fathers, being zealous for God, just as you all are today. I persecuted this way to the death, binding and putting both men and women into prisons, as also the high priest and all the council of the elders can testify. From them I also received letters to the brothers and started off for Damascus in order to bring even those who were there to Jerusalem as prisoners to be punished. But it happened that as I was on my way, approaching Damascus at about noon, a very bright light suddenly flashed from heaven all around me, and I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I answered, Who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus the Nazarene, whom you are persecuting. And those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, Get up, and go on into Damascus, and there you will be told about everything that has been appointed for you to do. But since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, I came into Damascus, being led by the hand by those who were with me. Now a certain Ananias, a man who was devout by the standard of the law, and well spoken of by all the Jews who lived there, came to me, and standing nearby he said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment I looked up at him, and he said, The God of our fathers has appointed you to know his will, and to see the righteous one, and to hear a message from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him to all people of what you have seen and heard. Now, why do you delay? Get up and be baptized. That's recorded in Acts chapter 22, verses 3 to 16. Clearly, there were already in Damascus those who were Jewish converts to Christianity. It seems to have been an early location for one of the churches of God we read about in the New Testament. Saul then was approaching Damascus, armed with a commission from the Jewish ruling council at Jerusalem. He was on a mission to extradite any Christians he could find there. By the time he entered the city of Damascus, he was, however, the recipient of an altogether different commission, the Lord's commission. In other words, he ended up visiting synagogues for a very different purpose than he'd originally intended. We've made mention of Saul's commissioning by the risen Christ. It comprised the vision he'd seen of Christ en route, as well as the things he heard from Ananias. The part played by Ananias must be thought of as incidental compared with any part that could have been played by Jerusalem-based apostles. When talking about this later, in Galatians chapter 1, Saul's chief concern would be to show that there had in fact been no interaction with or dependence upon any of the original band of apostles at the time of his commissioning. His message was not from them. In saying this, he was making the point very strongly that his had been a direct revelation from the Lord. The message he preached was not derived from those who were apostles before him. He could say to the church of God at Corinth much later, I received from the Lord that which also I delivered to you. Despite the first encounter being on the public highway, the Bible describes how Saul's early ministry remained a hidden one. By this, we mean there's very little recorded about it in the Bible Christian history book of Acts. In fact, if we take 33 AD as being the earliest possible date for Saul's conversion, and the mid-40s AD as the timing of his first biblically recorded work at Antioch, we can reckon on something like a decade of hidden years in which Saul experienced private, direct and intimate dealings with the Lord. All these, as he stressed to the Galatian churches, took place in isolation from Christianity's cradle in Jerusalem with its nucleus of leaders. Saul would later come to have a reason for stressing that his commissioning was independent of human leaders and solely dependent on the Lord. He says, But when he, that is God, who had set me apart even from my mother's womb, and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son in me, so that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately consult with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went away to Arabia, and returned once more to Damascus. Galatians 1, 15-17. In Saul's conversion experience, there was obviously no psychological preconditioning that led up to it. Quite the reverse, in fact. Saul was not someone looking to find himself, nor was he motivated to experiment with new ideas. Saul was a rising star in Judaism, a man bitterly opposed to Christianity. But Saul was to experience a complete U-turn in his entire worldview. What that Bible text in Galatians 1 emphasizes is that this episode in Saul's life was totally a work of God. It was God who set him apart, from before his birth, and all through grace, and according to God's own pleasure. The other striking thing that the Bible text tells us is that Saul's life was to be a life that revealed Christ. Before Christ was preached by Saul, he was first revealed in Saul. Jesus was revealed to Saul in order that he might become revealed in Saul. This was God's design for Saul's life. When Ananias, thinking of Saul's reputation, had struggled with the command to go to heal Saul's blindness and to baptize him, God had said to him, "Go, for he is a chosen instrument of mine to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the sons of Israel, for I will show him how much he must suffer in behalf of my name." That's our first hint that sufferings were not only destined to be the byproduct of a faithful life lived before the Lord, but there was to be more to them in God's purposes for the life of Saul. He was to suffer in order that Christ might be revealed in him. His life would become a public presentation of Christ, no less. As we come to conclude this first look at Saul, it's appropriate to challenge ourselves. Does our life reflect lifestyle messages picked up from worthy characters who influenced us? Or do we live out the reality that we've directly received a revelation from God? In a way that's reminiscent of John the Baptist, who said of Jesus, "He must increase and I must decrease." Saul would learn that he was first to be hidden so that Christ might later be revealed.
I saw one hanging on a tree in agony and blood. He fixed his holy eyes on me as near his cross I stood. Oh, can it be upon a tree the Saviour died for me? My soul is thrilled, my heart is filled to think he died for me.
I believe that hymn, written by John Newton, after reading the gospel narrative from the Bible, shows that he had a direct revelation from God. He says, "I saw one hanging on a tree in agonies and blood, who fixed his languid eyes on me as near the cross I stood. Sure never till my latest breath can I forget that look. It seemed to charge me with his death, though not a word he spoke. My conscience felt and owned my guilt, and plunged me in despair. I saw my sin his blood had spilt, and helped to nail him there." A second look he gave, which said, "I freely all forgive. This blood is for thy ransom paid. I die that you may live." Thus, while his death my sin displays in all its blackest hue, such is the mystery of grace, it seals my pardon too. As I said earlier, there's a transcript book available of all these talks called The Story of Saul from Tarsus. If you'd like one, you can download an online soft copy free of charge at churchesofgod.info/media. If you prefer a hard copy book, please write to us and ask for one to be posted to you. Just ask for the book title, The Story of Saul from Tarsus, and be sure to tell us your postal address. Our postal address to use is Search for Truth, Hayes Press, The Barn, Flaxlands, Royal Wootton Bassett, Swindon, SN4 8DY, UK. If you prefer to use email, then our email address is sft@churchesofgod.info. Until next time then, this is John Martin on behalf of your teacher Brian, David our studio producer, and our singers saying goodbye. God bless you bountifully, and many thanks for listening.
Blessed